Hello, this is Veterans News, a production of the United Veterans Organization of Nassau County. My name is Ed Allman. I'd like to thank Erica Bradley of North Shore TV for the use of their studio facilities here in Lake Success. And also Marcel Mendez for his technical support and for providing the training for our crew. The show is broadcast on public access television. I'd like to say hello to our viewers both in Nassau and Suffolk County. I'd like to thank Sabrina Lacey, the former commander and current chaplain of the Suffolk County VFW.
Thank you,
Okay, welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our crew on Camera 1, General Robert Gennari. On Channel 3, what are you laughing about, Frank? Camera 3, Mike Ferraro. Our Associate Director, Assistant Director, Gene Schurer. Our Graphics Director, Loretta DeBrino. And our other Graphics Director, Beverly Allman. Our co-host is Eric Spinner. I don't know why I'm screwing up these names today. Our producer is me, Ed Allman, and our director is Robert Lane, who never gets enough credit for the work that he does. By the way, if any members of the crew would like to host the show, just get a guest. Okay, by the way, if you would like to ask me a question or a comment, please go to my email, marddiv1@optimum.net. Our guest today is Fred NEILSON. Why I'm doing that to every name today. Fred is a Mustang Major of the Marine Corps with 21 years of service. He established the Homeless Veteran Support Initiative. He was commander of the 31st Combat Service Support Detachment. And he was, or is, I don't know if you still are, a Boy Scout leader.
I am involved with Scouts, yes.
Okay. He's also a member of the American Legion, the Marine Corps League, and Vice President of Suicide Awareness and Remembrance Flag Corporation. We'll talk to Fred about that today. We'd like to talk to our guest in a few minutes, but first let's remember some of the veterans who died recently. Herb Kraus was a veteran of the Army and attached to the Loring Air Force Base, where he worked on 747s, fighter squadrons, and missiles. Kenneth Kelch of Bellport died at 75 years of age. He was a proud Vietnam vet. John McGarvey of Coram was a lieutenant colonel in the Army in Vietnam and stayed in the reserves for another 29 years. Kevin Campbell of Northport was a Navy veteran and a NYPD detective. Joseph Dunlott, a Vietnam veteran and Nassau County police officer. He lived in Wantaw. Anthony Italiano of Smithtown served in the U.S. Marine Corps during the Korean War. David Smith of Levittown served in the Army Special Forces during the Vietnam War. Janice Henderson, yes, Janice Henderson was a female. She served in the U.S. Marine Corps and also served in the Mount Sinai Volunteer Fire Department. Dr. Malcolm Wallace served in the Navy from 53 to 57 and spent 33 years in Good Samaritan Hospital. Jesse Hunt of Freeport spent 30 years in the New York Army National Guard. And lastly, Daniel Flynn, a longtime resident of Mineola, was a Navy veteran of the Korean War and was a sergeant with the New York PD. If you know a veteran who died recently and you would like their name mentioned here, just email me, please, at marddiv1@optimum.net. Now that's the end of Veterans News, and it's time for our guest. Welcome, Fred.
Ed, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Okay, you met Stacy?
I did.
Okay.
A pleasure to meet you again, Stacy. Be well.
It's Sabrina.
Sabrina, what did I say? Stacy.
Stacy, Sabrina,
Wow.
Sabrina, Stacy. I like Sabrina.
I'll go with Sabrina. Thank you.
You know, Fred, you talked to me about mental problems before. I think I'm an example of one. Fred, first of all, let me ask you about the Veterans Hall of Fame. I understand you were a member of that?
You know, I had the great honor and distinction of being introduced there, presented, becoming part of the official record of the congressional dealings in Albany. I was nominated because a particular senator at the time said, we like some things we see happening in Glen Cove. And so they chose to nominate me for that, and it was approved in the state Senate.
Very good. You served in Vietnam?
I was in Vietnam from 1965 till April of 1968.
That's 3 years, or 2.5 years.
Yes, just short of 3 years, yes.
Wow, that's a long time to serve.
You know, it was, but we do things of that sort for really important reasons. I had a younger brother who chose to follow me into the Marine Corps.
Really?
I did not want him to come to Vietnam. I have a brother who's also in the Navy. He and I were both in Vietnam at the same time. We did not want our younger brother to go. So
Wow.
I kept extending and extending because of the protection of the sole surviving son.
Right.
I stayed as long as I could, and then my staff NCOs who were watching over me said, Neilson, if you stay or try to stay any longer, we're going to Section 8 you out of the Marine Corps. So I decided I better return to CONUS.
Fred, before were you drafted into the?
Oh, no. No, I
You
did
volunteered?
not. I volunteered, absolutely.
Were you, did you attend college or anything like that? Because you said you were an officer in the military.
I was an officer, and before my time in the Marine Corps, I had no college. I got college after work in the Marine Corps.
How did you become an officer?
I was very fortunate that a situation occurred in Bogue Field in which we had a riot in the dining hall. I was Sergeant of the Guard for the day, and when I encountered that as a combat Marine with a .45 on my hip, I knew exactly what to do. I discharged a round into the ceiling of the dining facility and then leveled my weapon on the temple of the largest person in the room. I took him under custody and removed him from the scene. After I secured him at the headquarters, I went back to the dining facility, so pleased to see everyone was minding their manners, and they were not rioting any longer. However, as a result of that action, within 10 days, the command shipped me out because there were threats on my life and that of my family. So I went to Washington because I had an opportunity to go to either Washington or to the drill field. I wanted to go to the drill field, but my marriage and my life, my wife, my family were young. I don't think we were ready for the stress of the drill field. I went to Washington, D.C., and was assigned to Marine Barracks 8th and I. There, some wonderful things happened. I had a remarkable commanding officer who said, yes, we think you're officer material. And he helped get that package through under the enlisted commissioning program. I was extremely fortunate.
And what year was that?
Let's see, my commissioning year was 1960.
In the 60s? 68, okay. Because I know during that period of time it was not that easy to get any kind of rank. When I run across a lot of the Vietnam veterans, and like, thank you for your service, a lot of them served and they were enlisted. And some of them did, like you did, 30 years or whatever, and they retired from the military. As of today, they're not getting enough funding.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, and then they are having problems, and that's when we come through to try to help them out here.
Sure.
But that's why I asked you, and I commend you for your service. Thank you for what you've done.
You're very
and
kind.
you also brought up that you were enlisted first, and you work your way up to become an officer.
Yes.
All right. Did you get married in the military?
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I was probably on leave out of bounds, meeting my lady, to whom I had written from Vietnam, and we decided this is the time. And I did not want to call my officer in charge and say, can I stay longer? I traveled all the way back from Florida to Camp Lejeune to ask him. And he somewhat chided me. He said, Neilson, you could have made a phone call, you know. I said, sir, if I'd have made a phone call and you said no, then I would be absent without leave. And I couldn't have that. So he said, so now you have to travel all the way back? I said, sir, if you would meet me halfway, I would marry her in Georgia, but we're going to get married in Florida. So I went all the way back, yes.
So you were in Camp Lejeune?
Camp Lejeune.
Lejeune. You were in there?
John A. Lejeune, yes.
Did you serve in there? You served? How long?
Oh, Marines spend a lot of time at Camp Lejeune, in and out. So
The reason why I'm bringing this up, because the viewers out there, you know, we have this new thing going on with the Marines. So
yeah.
I know we don't have that much
That's
time.
right.
I just
The
want you,
water.
I know you probably know a lot about that.
Yes.
I just want you to tap into that a little bit. So if someone out there have that accolade that they can get their benefits, then here we
Right.
are.
I'm so pleased that those public service announcements are on TV. The list of illnesses that came from the poisoned water, and I drank it. I remember drinking it. I remember saying, gee, this tastes strange, but if you've been to Camp Lejeune in the summer, you're thankful for any kind of water. And I did drink a lot of it. And so there are issues in my family, folks, absolutely issues down to my grandchildren drawn from that exposure.
All right. You were, you mentioned Quantico, and I just heard that you were commissioned in 1968.
Yeah.
Did you go to Quantico during 1968?
Yes, I was down there for OCS.
When, do you remember the months?
Let's see, November. I was down there in November.
Well, we were there. I was there at the same time. I was there from August to December.
I remember
And,
you. You were that guy. I'm sorry.
Yep.
I don't.
It wasn't that big, wasn't that large.
Ed, were
we
you an
might have-
enlisted person?
No, I was.
Oh, you was an officer?
I was a 90-day wonder twice.
Oh,
It
90
was
one, yes.
6 months worth of training. First, they made you an officer, then they trained you to be an officer for 6 months. Then I went to Vietnam. Okay. We're letting the time go so fast.
Yes.
Let me ask you what you did as an officer. The first thing you can do is tell us about the Defense Logistics Agency.
You know, the Defense Logistics Agency is an organization. At that time, it was in Old Town Alexandria. I think now it's moved out to nearby in Maryland. But at that time, Old Town Alexandria. We referred to it as a purple-suited outfit, meaning it had people from every branch of the military, officer, enlisted. It had retired military, had civilians, some at the high executive level of civilians, working with admirals and generals. It was a very high-powered organization because we were supposed to be problem solvers. And that's what I was there to do. I was there to watch certain requisitions, certain orders, mostly from overseas, that got stuck in the system somehow. Now, among the things that we looked at while I was there, you might recall the headlines of the $600 toilet seat.
Yeah,
And things of
I
that sort.
remember that.
Caspar Weinberger was the Secretary of Defense, and Ronald Reagan was the president. He got a lot of flack, both of them did, about that $600 toilet seat. However, in the same newscasts, there were reports of how many of our helicopter squadrons were grounded because of problems with the rotor blades. The problem with the rotor blades turns out to have been bolts that were manufactured substandard. My desk, a little desk in the dusty corner somewhere, was one that had a red phone on it. The red phone was connected on one end to the White House, the other end to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. No problem. Anybody could do that job because all you had to say was, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Now, they would call me and say, Neilson, we need, and you know, folks, they gave me every tool you can imagine. They gave me tools that would let me sit at the highest level of a manufacturer's boardroom, and I would have to level my eyeballs on the president of the company and say, you must. If you cooperate, then I will not invoke the authorities I have to stop all of your business and have you dedicate everything to manufacturing these bolts. We didn't have to go that far. They were very eager to help solve this problem. We could not have helicopter squadrons all over the U.S. and all over the world where the U.S. serves down because of bolts. They fixed the bolts, folks. The Army was very happy. All those helicopter squadrons were very happy. But that's just an example. And people said to me, thank you. But folks, I didn't do that much. I sat in a conversation. The manufacturers did everything because they were committed to the safety and well-being of this country.
Good. You did something with the homeless veterans. Or was it homeless people? What
Yes,
did you do?
know, homeless people in Washington, D.C. were championed by a man named Mitch Snyder at the time when Ronald Reagan was in office. Many of those homeless were veterans. And for their sake then, when Mitch Snyder called me, I was at home. It was cold. My family was cold. We were wrapping blankets. I got a call, and he said, "Are you Fred NEILSON?" I said, "Yes." You know, folks, I had access to the warehouses. I had the authority to release cots and blankets. They're for disaster preparedness. But because I had the authority, Mitch Snyder said, "Can you help us?" I wanted to help those veterans, but I wasn't willing to go and say, "Are you a veteran?" "No." "Are you a veteran?" I helped everyone at Mitch Snyder's shelter. So we delivered 100 cots and blankets to Mitch Snyder that very night. And at that moment, I became an outlaw because I broke the public law that said we can't do that. So then I scurried very, very quickly and made some phone calls. And the next week I said, I needed to change the law so I'm not an outlaw. You know, we worked for months. I was welcomed over at the White House, and we had some people there help us. A lot of really good people stepped forward to help this little Marine major who couldn't stay in bounds, always had to color outside the lines. The law was changed that made it legal to do what we had done, and so we expanded the program to be nationwide. We had a gent down in a homeless shelter in Louisiana, size 13 boots, and I made a phone call because I had the computer access. I knew where those boots were. So I sent a truck driver to Mechanicsburg. They picked up the boots. They drove them to Louisiana and gave them to the man in the homeless shelter. I gave credit always to Casper Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense. He started getting all these thank you letters, and he says, "What's this?" Homeless Support Initiative. So then he tracked down who Major NEILSON was. It was a good time. We did a lot of good things. More than $1 million worth of government excess material were placed in the hands of homeless shelters in various locations in the nation at no cost, no further cost to the taxpayer.
How did you get involved with the American Legion?
There was a gent in Camp Lejeune, in Glen Cove, who helped me when I wanted the tax consideration for my home. He was a World War II veteran, very elegant black gentleman. Everyone in Nassau County knows James B. Middleton.
Oh,
now
Middleton.
sadly deceased.
Yeah.
A wonderful man, very, very polished, just a genuine elder in his church. It's just, he was the embodiment of every good quality we want to see in a veteran. So he was long established in the American Legion. So he asked me, "Fred, are you a member?" I said, "No, I'm not, Mr. Middleton." He said, "Well, you ought to be." He gave me a pen and a piece of paper, and I was a member very quickly after that. But James B. Middleton, a wonderful example of what veterans are when we come back. Once we take the oath, something happens inside of us, and we get this thing about serving. And just because we step perhaps out of the uniform does not mean we stop serving. And Jimmy was like that. He served the community, he served his church, he served.
But the thing is, once a Marine,
always a Marine.
simplify.
And unfortunately, he didn't have that privilege of being a Marine. I was the Marine. And
I know.
He was excellent. What a wonderful example of what a veteran should be. Yes.
So how did you get started with the organization that you have now? I see you have a lot of expertise in nonprofit organizations and helping.
You know, almost always a meaningful not-for-profit is born out of pain. So the founder, Kevin Hertel, in his family had members who died by suicide, who were veterans.
Kevin Hertel?
Kevin Hertel.
Where did he live?
Kevin Hertel lives in Belmore, in Long Island. He was an Air Force veteran, father, husband and father. He carries a tremendous amount of power and authority in himself. I think that is also because of the pain. He has not sought to avoid the pain or to look aside from it. He goes right into the pain and lets the pain empower him. So what he said was, you know what, we can't even say the word suicide. If we're on active duty and we say, you know, I'm having a mental health issue, I'm fearful, I'm whatever, unfortunately in our warrior culture, we're confused now about how to deal with that. And so we deal with it very negatively.
Well, don't you think the reason why it's complicated from what I'm seeing, because I served in '85,
Yes.
and I was in Korea, so I consider myself being trained strategically, right? And I'm still talking that jargon. But when I talk to the rest of the people that I know that have that tendency, they tend not to be in that area. And when they served in the military, they couldn't get that cohesiveness and that team go lottie, and they didn't have a buddy. That was the number one thing that kept those innuendos or thinking out of the way, because your buddy. I know one time being a woman, and my roommate was a woman, and they were coming over from the North Korea, you know. So she said to me, I was the young one, you go into the locker room, I'll lock you in the locker room, and then I'm going to go into the locker room. You know, we have the lockers, and then I'm going to lock you. But what happened was, I was locked in the locker room. That's the thinking. But that's the mindset. Is that suicide intent, or is that just the thing? And that's the line that we are having problems with now, because people in the civilian world is looking at it as a different way. But if you're in a mindset and you're militant, you're going to look at it as a strategically defense mechanism that you need to tunnel through that journey that you got to continue going through so you can complete 30 years.
You know, there are many reasons, because suicide is an individual act. And just as Sabrina has said, there are there are important reasons that we make every choice in our life. And I'm going to offer that it is not always a response to a dire, threatening situation. May I tell you about a young Air Force person? He was out at the Air Force Academy. He wanted to be a pilot so much. He worked hard in his academics. He was in his senior year, and he succeeded. His academics were strong. He sacrificed. He did what was necessary. He wanted so much for orders to flight school. He got them. Do you know, in the same day, he died by suicide, in the height of his success. So it is not always because of something dire.
Well, he died because of suicide, and that was just one person. And we don't want to alleviate one person. But how many people were in his arena that did not commit suicide?
You know, and they didn't. And
how many do you think there were? Maybe 20?
And his immediate, yes, that would be reasonable. I met some of those people, and they didn't know. His closest friend didn't see it because he did not know what to look for.
Okay. I just want to mention there was an armband, a wristband with a phone number on it that you could call for any veteran that was in trouble. You could either give him the phone number, or you could call yourself. Now there's no more phone number. There is just 988. That's all. Just pick up the phone, your own phone, dial 988. And
988.
you get 988. That's, you have 911, you have 411, now you have 988.
But also, Ed, you also have the American Legions, you have the VFW, you have those nonprofit organizations. You have organizations that help you, but being that we bring it to, is already in awareness, everybody know. You can go anywhere and you can ask for help, but the most help that you can get is doing and coming out.
You know, folks, any place that you see this flag, this SAR flag, is a safe place to talk about issues of mental health. You will not be judged. You will not be turned away. Kevin has a commitment to get this flag flown over the Capitol of the United States of America. We have a strong commitment to communicate within the military, our warrior culture, to not judge. When someone says, I'm having a difficult day, I have a mental health issue, let us respect that as a statement of need, not a justification for rejection.
Yeah. Tell me what the flag looks like and what it means to you.
This flag is, first of all, a rally point for all of us who care about veteran suicide. But for the families of those who have died by suicide, it is a magnificent inclusion in a community. Kevin gets requests from all over the United States. Please, my son died by suicide. My daughter died last month. I cannot afford to have a flag. I want that flag, you know, because of people like Stacy in the VFW. We have people in the UVO even who have sponsored the placement of these flags in different homes across the nation to support the idea that we can heal together, we can prevent suicide together. As Stacy said, where is that buddy? Can that buddy see you in your suffering? Will you trust him to put his hands on your shoulder?
Tell us what the SAR stand for.
Suicide Awareness and Remembrance.
And when
flag.
was this organization started?
Well, I guess it started in Kevin's heart in response to his own pain about 5 years ago, about 3.5, 4 years ago, in a meeting where Ed was attending with Congressman Swazi. I met Kevin, and from that point forward, Kevin's awareness of his work has grown across the United States.
Is there a question in the amongst the crew for Fred?
Yes, Ed. Fred, Eric Spinner, happy to meet you again.
Thank you,
Known
Eric.
you a good dozen years since I joined the Legion. I have a question about the organization. As you're aware, there are many organizations that do things for veterans.
Yes.
Some of them are national, some of them are local. And I ask this only because from familiarity, there is a national organization that advertises every evening on television, and they'll send you a blanket if you make a donation, and they have a major payroll. They have a tremendous payroll, and yet they're a 501c3. My question is, how much payroll is there in the SAR flag organization, and are any monetary donations or assistance given to veterans organizations or veteran service providers?
Excellent questions, and I'm not surprised. Knowing you as I do, Eric, and I've always respected what you stand for and your commitment to veterans, so thank you for that. Kevin worked very, very hard. It was extremely important to him to meet standards that he felt were appropriate. His personal standards are very, very high, so he made certain that SAR was an approved 501c3. Secondly, you addressed the question about salary. At this point, I am soon to become the treasurer for SAR, and $0 are spent in salary for anyone. We're all volunteers. We're all committed to the well-being. That's what causes us to turn over in bed and get up and say, oh, I've got a new idea. And so it is that we're looking for many, many ways, yes, to generate revenue, because the revenue allows Kevin access to more and more places. So it is that there are many organizations that Kevin applauds, and he helps. People like Warrior Ranch, Heroes Among Us. Kevin is committed to being a friend and helping them with the flow of cash when it's possible.
Good. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, that's it. We're out of time. Can I have the crew up here? Come on, guys.
So when
come
you're
on
doing
up.
your, since you've been affiliated with this, who have you given the flag to? How many people?
Probably 50.
Eric
60.
Spinner. Eric
In
is here.
addition,
Come on, Bob.
organizations buy the flag to flag their
Mike.
posts.
Oh,
And
okay.
we do
Mike Ferraro's
a
over
ceremony
here.
called a 922.
Loretta Debrino.
9 because
Thank you
September's
very much,
Mental Health
Loretta,
Month.
coming out.
22, we do 22.